Hey, Rhino here. I have a little bit of bad news and I'm hoping you really understand. I'm sure you will. But originally, when we set this out, this podcast was going to be a full 8 episodes with a bonus episode. However, with the global pandemic, it really just wrecked the game plan of what we were going to do for the last 4 episodes. It required us going out to Boys Town, filming some of the reactions of their staff, Pat himself, the other characters, getting their feedback, and just a way to kind of button this up. We may or may not get that. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to give you the bonus episode, which we talk about as episode 9 of kind of the nuts and bolts, what went on. However, this may very well be the last episode that you get out of this series. If anything changes, we'll let you know. But I just wanted to kind of clear up that we've been talking about this in the past as an 8 episode season. And it definitely looks like it's only going to be 5. I hope that you, your loved ones, those you serve are doing all right now. And let's jump into it.
Burning the mic, burning the mic with my garlic hummus.
I need to spray the mic now after this.
We are on brand again with Sarah talking about food. This is not a food podcast. All right, welcome to Team On Location. We are talking about On Location, Boys Town, Nebraska. There's a trailer out already talking about what it is we're trying to do, some behind the scenes and things like that being shared. The goal is to, of this podcast, just share some behind the scenes as to the work that actually goes into a production of this scale. And it's larger than anything I've done before when it comes to making some online video and things like that. It is nowhere near the production of like a Hollywood film, of course. But there's a ton of work that goes into it. So I just wanted to have a conversation around like peeling back the curtain as to like what went on. We're recording this roughly 2 months before everything's more or less finalized. So we're going to share as much as we can. There'll be some caveats of like, unfortunately, there's probably still gonna be some costs incurred and stuff that we can't share yet because we haven't ran into them.
I see you staring at me while you're sitting. I'm aware. It's okay.
I don't think there's too much, but you never know. Sometimes the curveballs are thrown at you. So let's, I don't know, when maybe it's a place to start. When you and I were talking about this idea, June of 2019-ish,
yeah.
It was kind of like, hey, like you've seen the backside, the behind the scenes of like what it looks like when we make some of these videos that we've done at conferences and such.
Right, because we had already worked on 2 projects together. So we had already worked on the CalLABA videos and we had already worked on the Behavior Analyst Leadership Council videos. And so I kind of had an idea of what that involved and some of the back and forth that went around. And I also knew that like Jarek was more involved in some of the BALC videos. And so, I did a little bit of some conceptual understanding of, some, a 10 or 15 minute video. I'm like, okay, that shouldn't be that complicated. I'm sure we could make something that's, a feature length documentary plus additional continuing education units all being filmed on a site with someone that may or may not be willing to share stuff with us, where we will have to literally import in all of the gear. Little did I know what was actually involved.
It's like we just need a camera and that's it.
Yeah. I'm like, just like hop on a flight, like whatevs. Like I'm gonna see Pat. I'm like, hey, let's work out, Pat. Let's film some of this. We can go out to dinner. Pat loves wine. I love food. Let's have wine and food. I'd been to Boys Town before. I'm like, no, we can just kick around. It's easy peasy.
Yeah. So we, I don't know even where to start. I mean, what did you learn in the process? Maybe like it's a lot, right?
Yeah. I mean, the kind of our first step was this. We had to pitch it to Pat. So I remember reaching out to him and I said, hey, Ryan and I have this insane idea.
Yeah.
Can we schedule a call? What we should have done was record that call with him.
We should have
recorded that call to pitch this out to you. And I said, Pat, you're my friend. Like, there's no pressure. We have so much respect for you. Like, we'd never want you to do something you're not comfortable with. So you in no way have to say yes. But if you're the slightest bit interested, like, let's have a conversation. So of course, he wrote back in his like usual Pat way. Well, Sarah, that's just fine. when do you want to talk? I said, okay. So we made this date to talk. And
that reply was at 4:30 in the morning, probably too,
2:45, maybe before I hit the gym.
Yeah.
So we had this conversation with him last summer, and, Ryan and I were basically like, what are we pitching him exactly? And so we decided what we wanted to say to Pat was we wanted to do a longer form piece where we were going to be able to film him and really highlight some of the primary contributions that he's made in the field of behavior analysis, both in his service through boards and as editor of JABA, and through his research and journal articles. But also we wanted to really highlight the great work that's being done at Boys Town, and especially a lot of the work that he does with his psych interns. And we were hoping that, he would be willing to kind of just like let it all hang out and be in part of this journey and just let us film kind of everything. And literally, I think he thought about it for 15 seconds?
Yeah, no, he was extremely fast on it. And it was also this cool, like, reciprocal sort of thing in a little bit of a way, to where when he reached out to the uppers over at Boys Town Village to get like the approval through them too, it was like, oh, we could also put something out that shows like what it is that they do too. Yeah. So yeah, it kind of like was morphing, I guess, along the way. Since we didn't know exactly what we were chasing, it was like, there's wide opportunity here for showcasing some of Pat's good work. Mm-hmm. There's wide opportunity to potentially create some cool content for people that are looking to learn and better themselves in the field. But also maybe we could do a thank you / a little bit of justice to the amazing stuff that's going on in Boys Town. So it kind of morphed the final product as a result of those phone calls.
Yeah. And so then the next thing that we had to do was figure out, okay, when is this going to happen? Because Pat has an incredibly punishing travel schedule. You have a punishing travel schedule. I have a punishing travel schedule. And we knew we needed a couple months to prep this. And so we decided on these dates in late October. And again, this is like, July of last year. And so then we spent the next 3 months just like working through what does this look like. We had a whole Google Doc. We had our budget spreadsheet, and I went through and I read, honestly, I should have just like used this as like a type 4 CE before the BACB changed their guidelines. I must have read 75 journal articles. Yeah. I talked to a lot of my friends in behavior analysis, like, hey, what are your favorite Pat Fryman articles? Why do you care about these? Because again, Pat is such a prolific author. It's kind of hard to determine
read 195 chapters.
Yeah, like what's like the best of. But in doing that, I mean, I have to say, and every time I engage in these kind of exercises, I'm like, dude, I'm a better person because of it. I'm a better behavior analyst as a result of this. And also just because Pat's work has not been focused on autism, and that's really been my kind of primary discipline. So it's also really interesting to me to just read about something that isn't necessarily about the population that I've spent most of my career working with.
My thoughts were, I need to get Jarek on board for this because this is way more than
one person.
And so that's when we talked about it in a previous episode on this podcast, but how we were just like, I was like, hey man, this is the pitch. I think we can do it. And if we can't make it a very interesting piece out of this, I don't know where else we do it. So I was like, please sign up for this one, Jarek.
Well, and also just thinking, all of the planning that goes into understanding. I mean, we were planning the time of day. When is the sunrise? When is the sunset? We wanted to bring drones, the types of cameras that needed to be used for filming, for B-roll. I don't think people even understand how involved it is just to get equipment to a central location. And there was equipment that, Jarek was really generous and used some of his own equipment. Ryan, you have your equipment, but we also had to lease gear too, because if we would have purchased all of this gear outright, it would have cost us.
Yeah, we did a total rundown of like what a setup like we were using was, and it's a minimum of $30,000.
Yeah, just in gear.
Yeah.
And then where is this gear? Who do you ship it to? We needed to have an Airbnb to be able to keep all of it. Then we had
Airbnb was worth a lot of money at that time.
Right. And also like the car, little did people know, like in our like blacked out SUV, we had, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of camera gear
stuff sitting in there. Yeah.
And then we had to do prep calls together. We had to do prep Zooms together. Then we had to do prep calls with Pat. We had to have a shoot list. I had to go through all of the articles I wanted to talk to him about and have all of my interview questions. I mean, this again, so the lead up from when we pitched it to Pat, he accepted, and our first time being on the Boys Town campus was about 4 months.
Yeah.
And that was 4 months of prep, budgeting, and gear allocation, gear identification, and that was just honestly the tip of the iceberg. And I don't even think I realized it at that time.
Yeah. I remember during that time also, like, I was like, okay, I need to clean up a little bit of my skill sets on things I don't know. So I was waiting for a good opportunity to sign up for like courses. And this was the one where I was like, all right, I need to throw the cash down, take a couple online courses, and start cleaning up some of the skill sets I didn't necessarily understand. And that was where that paired with Jarek jumping on with his years of experience, I was like, okay, I feel like I've decreased the probability of messing up some of these shots, which was probably goal number one. Like, if we're going to go for this, got to decrease, the things that I know I can mess them up. So let's talk a little bit about what goes into like a good video, Jack. Like, what are the elements that people may not realize?
I think the key thing on a good video is proper lighting. Because a lot of these places that we go to, I mean, it looks okay, but if you put it on camera, it's pretty bland and basic. So if you want to really capture the essence and, beautify it in a way.
And if anyone's watching this podcast video right now, like, there's a giant light that's hidden us all up front. There's a backlight that's also hidden us to give us
5 different lights going on.
Yeah, to give us a nice little separation from the background. And there's a number of colored lights out here as well to just kind of add into that. And so each time we were to set up cameras to record, essentially about an hour and a half of work to set up to record something.
Well, and you also had to replicate the lighting exactly. If, because some of the interviews we did with Pat were done across, multiple days, and it had to match.
Yeah. And that's where even the littlest thing as to like what is placed in the background matters. And
I know where you're going with this.
And I learned accidentally on the second time around that there was something left in the background that I should not have left in the background. And I was like, well, I guess I'll be going through 6 hours of footage and blurring that out, and so there's just, I guess it's all very intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The exact mood, feel, and like lighting's one of those aspects.
Also audio too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, share a little bit about like audio and clean audio and how hard and why it matters.
And I think what people don't understand is audio matters so much more than the actual video itself, because we can forgive, lower quality video, but solid audio. If you have shitty audio, it's not gonna.
Shaudio?
Yeah, shaudio. It's not gonna work.
So during this time, like, there's always a primary microphone, backup microphone for everybody. And those have to be monitored live. One of the clips that we shared earlier in this podcast series, was you'd notice some static and things like that. And that's just, there was testing that we did offsite. We show up on site, we hit record. We weren't monitoring a track that we should have. When I say we, it's me.
Yeah,
Ryan.
we learned a lot during the first round.
And it's one of those things where, there's something interfering. I don't know if it was the barbells in the workshop or like some radio frequency that was up north on end of the campus. But in a sense, like, I guess an interesting aspect to this is like when we're filming, I hear you all talking about what you're doing and why we're trying to, make sure that it's somewhat being produced / directed ish, like we're heading down the direction that we're all kind of know that we're steering and aiming for. But also I'm like paying attention to things that are, are the memory cards, good? Are the, is something filling up? Was there a change in the lighting outside that's shining just barely through the blinds that might be overexposing something on the camera? Like, there's just so many details you're paying attention to that I never knew were there. What else goes in a good video?
I think also, I mean, this is not a technical aspect, but I think part of it is it's chemistry. So, for example, when you watch a Hollywood film, the director and producer cast very specifically for chemistry, whether that's between your lead actor or actress or the protagonist, whomever, but the chemistry has to work in order for it to really flow. And I don't care if that's a documentary or something of an entertainment. And so part of what we did also was, we had dinner with Pat.
Yeah.
The night before, we had some warm up conversations, and part of what helped in this is that Pat's your friend, Pat is my friend. We have history together, so I think it was easier for us to kind of work to that like point of comfort. But that's also something I really had to work on because I had like massive imposter syndrome. Like here I am, sitting with Pat, who's one of the most respected professionals in behavior analysis. And, I want to make sure I don't sound like an idiot when I'm, reviewing his journal articles, or sometimes he uses words and I'm like, Pat, I have no idea what you just said. I don't know what that word means. And so I'm just like writing it down, furiously. And I think there just needed to just be kind of this like baseline level of like comfort and trust. And that can only happen by interacting and talking to each other. And again, and I don't think we can kind of like overstate this enough, even though we had to go back and do a second shoot in December, it truly, truly was a blessing in disguise because we had all had time together in October. And so when we came together in December, there was just like this ease and comfort of like, oh, we're all friends. We've all been here before. And I think that's where we got just like the best video footage and that comes through for the viewer. And that was, to me, like a really incredible piece that I think, again, speaking about like life being in the margins, that you maybe can help edit a little bit to make chemistry and the kind of ease and comfort of the interaction, but really spending that time like pairing together was really
that doesn't
critical.
come across in the edit unless it's there originally. Yeah, for sure.
And I think it was good too to come back the second time around because we kind of know what we were kind of expecting, like his office and like the staff room. Because the first time it's like, I don't know what's I'm just going to show up and hopefully it looks good.
When I was walking into I'm literally walking into one of my behavior analytic heroes' offices and I'm like, hey, can I tear this up and move things around?
And Pat's like so cool. He was like, sure.
Yeah,
do
just move
whatever.
everything.
I'm just like, those books need to go over here. These need to go here. And Jarek's like, let's try this. Let's try that.
You're like, there's a random toothbrush being charged and it's on the ground. We need to move that out of the shot.
That was really there.
That's really was there.
Yeah. Man, I can relate to, when I was working in that line of work, I always had an extra pair of clothes, deodorant, toothbrush, and things like that, because you never know if there was something random that was going to happen.
Oh my gosh.
Campus,
well,
right?
and what people don't realize, when you guys were shooting the outside shots of Pat and I walking around, you guys were both lugging heavy camera equipment. And I felt so bad, like poor like Jarek and Ryan, just like sweat rolling down your faces. But you also have to be steady, right? Because you want to get this steady shot. And of course, in my California-ness, I'm wearing like this intensive, like heavy jacket. You guys are both in t-shirts. I think it's freezing cold and you're like dying. And those are little, the people just don't understand just how effortful. So it's this massive effort on behalf of, it's like your mind, your body, your soul. And I remember in December, after our day of shooting, and Ryan and I were talking to each other the next morning, I literally felt like I'd been hit by a Mack truck. I was like, I don't think I've been this exhausted in my life ever.
Yeah.
Because we had gone for 12 hours the previous day, like from sunrise to sunset. And when you're doing something and you are totally focused and dedicated to it, it literally takes everything out of you.
I remember telling Jarek, I was like, I watched, what was it? The Netflix Bill Gates special.
I love that.
And I was watching them walk through the woods and I was like, we could do this with Pat on this piece, like that campus walking around. And so I was like, Jarek, I think the game plan is, we'll just walk around for an hour. And he's like, whoa. We're going to hold like 12, 15 pounds worth of cameras steadily for an
unchanging
hour.
Terrain.
Yeah. It worked. I
mean, it wasn't easy.
Navigating geese.
Navigating
the geese.
It might be fun someday to at an event or party or something like that, show people, like hide some of the B-roll and show them the underneath of what we covered up during processes that.
We covered a lot of messed ups for sure.
But for that, like we knew we were going to be messing up. So you stack the deck in your favor, you record a couple angles, you have both people paying attention constantly for that hour of like trying to make sure everything's perfect. You hope that both people don't mess up at the same time, because if they do, you don't have a backup angle. But if they do, then, well, we'll figure out what to do next, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And conveniently they have these sweet little benches throughout campus. So it's like, hey,
you're like, you guys want to rest and sit down? Yeah.
It's like, yes, please.
So bags of gear, I think we showed up with a minimum of like eight or 10 different bags of just things that are filled up to the brim. We used probably half of it quarter of it's probably unnecessary. A quarter of it's probably there just for backups or something like that. Part of this is really exciting that maybe we've shared at this point or maybe not. It's just some of the behind the scenes. So there's sometimes like other cameras used just to capture the back end process of what was going on, so people could see what it is that we were talking about. Memory cards, lenses, like it is obscene how much goes into it. I think at one point there was 22 filled memory cards at 128 gigabytes each.
So it's like a terabyte.
What's the total of the?
We're hanging around 1.3, 1.4 terabytes of footage. It kind of grows slowly as you make new files and things like that. And as we get more supplemental shots and things that we're getting afterwards. But yeah, it's by no means insane, but it's also pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. I guess this was also one of those where it was the first time I wanted to really, I remember when we were talking about doing this, I was like, we need to shoot all this in 4K, which is just the current, moving into the current standard for a higher resolution than like high definition. And for that, it creates these large file sizes, but it also hopefully future-proofs things. So it's like, hey, if we're going to throw this time and money down into these, hopefully this is something that, we
want it to stand up over time.
Yeah, I would be really saddened if it's not still like really high quality 10 years down the road as a result of that. Anything else on the back end of like the production side of it?
You want to talk about post-production?
Ugh.
Yeah.
I think you guys have like some PTSD from the post-production.
So post-production is when you've finished up, wrapped up shooting everything, got all your files dropped in, or you start dropping your files onto a drive and you start working on actually editing the documentary. I think one of the first challenges we experienced on this one was I edit in Adobe programs. Jarek edits in Final Cut. So we have totally different suites, which, how to describe this? It's kind of like if you have worked in the same organization with folks, but they did entirely different roles. So if it's like, I've experienced accounting because I've been around accountants.
I'm the chief clinical officer, but now I'm the CFO.
Yeah. It's kind of like I have an idea of how this works, but I don't know where things go. I'm not the expert in this one. So I remember that one was like one of those realizations where I was like, you know what? I got to bite the bullet and I got to learn Final Cut a little bit. But it also enables, and talking about like lessons learned or things I knew that I needed to do, but like were kind of hard to talk yourself into initially, which is like, I need to step back and be like, you know what, we're gonna do this in Final Cut because A, I can learn it, no time better than now, but B, that's where Jarek's expertise is. So we just need to leverage, like lean on that entirely. What on post? Where to start?
Well, to be honest, when we did our first editing session the first day, I had no idea what we were going to do. I was like, we have 1 terabyte worth of footage. Supposed to look through this and see what's good and see what's not.
Right, because what people don't realize is we didn't really necessarily...
We didn't have a story. We didn't have a story.
We just filmed all of these things, and so how do we craft an arc and...
Out of about 8 hours of footage.
Yes.
Yeah, it was very tricky for me, but Ryan's pretty good with stories, so I just trust him with his judgment on that.
Getting better at it, I guess. I've been reading like crazy in those areas and trying to... I remember I watched... Like I mentioned the Bill Gates thing. I've watched every documentary piece I can potentially find in the last 6 months. Like every night, I come home, my girlfriend's like, "What do we watch? Another documentary?"
You're like, "Grab your popcorn, Kelsey." What's happening?
I've got to get great at these things, or at least understand like how people craft them. But yeah, there's the first process really is sifting through like what are the good things, and at that point, what I had done was hand it off to you and Abby. Like, hey, look through these and let me know like what you think is really impactful. Get some perspectives on that because we start sorting through what we think was important.
Yeah, because I think for the doc, you told me to just pick the ones that you would think that is interesting. That's not necessarily related to like the behavior, the BA stuff. You know?
Yeah. No, there's maybe one reference of behavior analysis. There's a couple of references to the thinking of it and things, but specific terms, jargon.
Yeah, it's not an overt BA piece. Yeah.
None of that's there intentionally. And I remember I was like, hey, I think I sifted down, we'd take turns sifting through like, hey, we think this is interesting. And sometimes I'm like, this is the coolest piece. And Jarek's like, nah, this needs to go. This ain't interesting at all. And I'm like, all right. I think they call it some weird term of like killing your lovelies. It's the things that the
You're
shots,
like wiping away a single tear rolling down your face. Okay.
Well, yeah, it's the things that you've come to love during the process that you think so great. And it's just like, no, sometimes you gotta let those things go. Which has been fun. And cool thing about this project is when you let one of them go, like in the doc piece, we can still put it into the continuing education. So
I think it's like, for me, it wasn't because it wasn't good. It's because you told me to focus on like the general side of things and not necessarily just focus on the BA stuff.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to knock down the content. It was more so for the audience and like the goals of what we had out of the piece. So yeah, I think it was, if I remember right, as of this point, and we're probably, I'm hoping 2/3 of the way through the process, probably a total of about 8 days spent together working on it, taking turns, looking for music. You spend an entire day just clicking through track after track after track after track. There's an entire process of sound design, which probably by this time, I actually exported the trailer with just the sound design because I wanted to put out a little thing to show people just like what goes into, you've seen those videos where you have the full trailer, but what I'll do is I'll cut out all the audio of people speaking and the music just to show like what supplemental sounds are being put in there. Geese honking, wind sounds, tree ruffles, things like that. Those have to be looked up individually as well. And it's one of those things that Jarek and I have been playing around with and realizing that the experience just completely enhances and it makes you feel like you're there when you start to add those sort of sounds in. And we haven't even started that yet, but we're pretty savvy at finding those things pretty quick, I guess, and have some archives of those. But yeah, so there's sound design, the audio, leveling and mixing and stuff that goes into there after everything's been pieced together. And these things just look like a kind of cool, fun puzzle that you put together. Now to shift gears, what there might be folks out there when it comes to, we put all this, to restate this and to shift gears, we through roughly 3 to 6 months of our working lives at this, between all of us in different ways. As such, we've, disclosed this is formatted under a business, this venture that we're trying to, grow and build out here.
Which we also had to file for an LLC. We had to get appropriate representation, contracts. I mean, all of those things too, as well, because this is a business and we're treating it as such.
Yeah, I didn't even talk about like waivers signed by every single person that you see in the film. Like there's a process here. But yeah, I guess as a result, like we've positioned this strategically both as something that you can pay what you think is worth for the documentary piece.
Yes.
To help recruit some of those, but also the content for continuing education is up there as well. If somebody, I guess, can you speak a little bit to, a business, a university? What are some of the things out there that we're hoping this reaches and how we're framing that?
Yeah. I mean, part of the whole concept of this, again, was twofold. We wanted to create this, piece and memorialize this place in time with Pat and what he's doing with Boys Town, and to really provide him with this platform to highlight all of the contributions he's made into behavior analysis and to really have his message and his voice heard. But also we really wanted to creatively look at the continuing education space. And I think there's a lot of really awesome content out there right now. And definitely, Ryan and I have talked about this over and over again. Sometimes we feel like behavior analysis is maybe like 5 to 10 years behind some other industries in terms of how we leverage our messages and share and learn on different social media channels, and especially through using video as a primary mechanism to learn and disseminate. So we wanted to do something in the continuing ed space that just hasn't been done. And so for us, it was just like, okay, on location, like we're going to the place we're talking about. We are taking a deep dive on a variety of different topics. We want people to feel like they're there with us and having, this experience. But also we wanted to talk about, content, research, and articles that we really felt like would help elevate the practice of behavior analysis, no matter what you're doing. And so we are really welcome if there are educational institutions, if there are organizations that are interested in having the CE content that we've created be licensed, to use within, their educational institution or organization. We're happy to do that. And that was kind of the point of what we wanted to do, is that we wanted it to be so great that this could be part of training. and be incorporated into curriculum because it's so engaging, and it really, especially looking at such a high percentage of people that are coming into this field are young. The vast and increasingly the vast majority of certificates in behavior analysis have been certified for less than 5 years, and that number kind of keeps going down with every subsequent testing cycle. And so we wanted to show that there was a way to meaningfully engage in continuing education for people to remember your certification is a baseline. It's a floor of competency. And so we wanted to offer something that is really enriching, inspiring for people to be able to do better for the people that they serve. And it doesn't matter if it's people with autism, if you're in gerontology, traumatic brain injury, we don't care. But this continuing education content is incredibly powerful, and we think that there's a place for it within graduate training programs and at an organizational level.
Yeah, I remember when I was jumping in the field, it was like the only way I could really get a sense of like what it looks like, since there's so much sensitive client information, is you had to commit a fairly large commitment of like hopping into an internship or finding a place to work, shifting your employment, whatever it was, to be able to get that experience. And what I love about this project is like we're in a sense taking a little bit of a step of showing people what it looks like in that context in a little bit of a way as to what's going on. And this one, just a sliver, right? Just a sliver of, this is what psychology and a psychologist from Pat's experience and background of Boys Town kind of looks like. Small sliver. But that's I guess the exciting part of it too, is like over time, this adventure / venture, both of them, are going to paint, a picture of what it actually looks like for those people getting into the field or considering it.
Yeah. And what we're, I think, really trying to do with On Location is, Pat to me sets the stage, right? Like this is, this amazing person that we have respect for in our field that has such a powerful presence and the ability to convey his message in such a salient way that truly, evokes emotion. And I think people feel like deeply grateful and then also excited about the stuff that they're doing. But what we're hoping to do is kind of continue this through different seasons of On Location and focus more specifically on some other like verticals in behavior analysis to really provide people with the tools. If ultimately what we're saying is we want you to do good stuff, we want to really show you how to do that, and we want to show you that by taking you there. And so that's kind of the future direction, which I'm pretty excited about. I don't know how much I'm allowed to tease now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is season 1. If anybody, can think it out a little bit, like season 2 is pretty much implied, but yeah, I'm stoked. There's plans being made. There's some logistics to sort out, I guess. And I just want to make sure that we aren't over promising things, but what you're talking about of creating things that are in the verticals that people are used to, which what we're talking about is anybody that provides ABA therapy for children with autism, in center, out of center, things like that. Like those are the things that we're thinking of, that if you've watched yet, because technically this is our last episode that's out there and people could have seen already, or if you're going to pay attention to these sort of things, you'll realize, oh man, this is the behavior analysis message, but it's not going to necessarily be the setting that you're used to working in. Even though it's applicable to a lot of the things that you're doing, it's not that setting. And so we realized that we needed to do that. And this was the first step in that sort of process of like, could we do this? And I guess the last thing to add there is like something that requires really covering what behavioral services looks like is much larger in a sense of the scope of a project. So this was a good first step. Can we get through this? So yeah, I think that's it. Is there anything else that has to do with the back end process, things like that?
Watch it.
Do you want to talk about food?
No, excuse me. I don't have any food comments for this episode. Thank you for food shaming.
It's part of the podcast now. People are gonna be expecting this. I mean, the steaks were good.
Oh yeah.
Omaha steaks.
I know, but remember when we were there, I didn't even eat any Omaha steaks. I only ate salad and chicken.
That's your problem.
That was your choice.
There's some great food out there.
I know, because I paid for it. That's why I ordered the salad, because you guys had like the flank steak.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't know exactly where we're at. I'm guessing that at a hard cost, this has been something that's pushing a 30K sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's not counting time of Sarah and I. I've dumped 3 months of my life into this, at least at this point. And we're recording in February 28th. And I still have the entire content for the CU to put out there and like finish crafting. So yeah, it's an intense process. That's part of the behind the scenes as to what goes on. Check it out if you haven't already. This is actually our closing episode of this season. So surprise, I think I was planning this one as a bonus episode. But yeah, it's definitely over. So
we really
season,
out.
This season, we're really out.
Really
out.
For now.
That's Team Location, and we are really out.
Peace.
We out. Peace.